reference also which states that in 1982 this particular money laundering word was used in Watergate scandal, and also in a US case law which also refers this money laundering. So then what is the need for money laundering? First of all, money trail itself will lead to perpetrators of crime. So any person who is having money, unaccounted money, huge wealth of money, will automatically lead to the investigate agencies to find it out. Next, money per se can be a target for investigation. For these two reasons, the launderer wants to hide his money, or rather convert the illegal money into untainted money. For example, I will just normally I used to refer in all the classes. No, I can't take example of. Assume that I am a lawyer and I commit an offense. Assume that this is only for an example. Assume that I indulge in smuggling. In fact, the smuggling is a scheduled offense as far as PMLA is concerned. There, Customs Act appears as in part A of the schedule and as well as part B of the schedule. Section 132 of the Customs Act is a scheduled offense as far as part A is concerned. Assume that. So if I assume that, for an example, I generate proceeds of crime by virtue of smuggling and I have 1 crore of money. So if I declare it to the income tax officer, he will try to take it. He will not question the source of money. Source of income is not the problem of income tax. As long as I declare the income, pay the highest slab of tax, he will be well and good. In fact, he may even issue me with a platinum certificate or a silver certificate for a large tax. The real source of this point of billing, I may be landing into prosecution, other penal action under the Customs Act. Then what I do as a lawyer, I would like to project it as which is received from my clients as professional income. So I just raise a bill, Binami bills, or no accountation by just all these things. Normally they used to say, I just take a telephone directive, which is not there in current regime. Take a telephone directive, somehow take some names from the directory, put A, B, C, and account this income as if it is generated from the clients, as if it is payment from clients. So I will project the smuggling proceeds as income generated from a legal provision. On this score, though I may be paying income, just because income tax, just because I pay the income tax doesn't mean that I'll be exonerated by the enforcement directorate, because it is a separate offense. Money laundering is separate. So if I show it as proceeds from smuggling, so naturally I will land into trouble. What I will do is I will project it as if it is come from professional income. This is called self-laundering. Normally, you will not find the 3 cycles of money laundering. In this case, just for an example, I am telling placement, layering, and integration. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as I told you, predicate offense is the underlying crime which generates proceeds of crime. For example, you have predicate crime or predicate offense or scheduled offense. Because I am telling you, scheduled offense will take in the context of Indian PMLA, it is called as scheduled offense. Why? Because section 21Y says scheduled offense means the offenses which are described under the schedule to the PMLA. There are 3 inside the schedule. There are 3. They are categorized into part A, part B, and C. You will see that later. So in other words, what are the items which are listed at predicate offense will be the offense which generates proceeds of crime. In fact, the researchers say there are broadly, if you categorize all the predicate offense throughout the world, it will be around 180 offenses. Broad categorization. If you go through the part A of the PMLA, you will find under IPC various sections are there. So for example, 420, 120, capital B, 409, 467, etc. So every act. So you can't inside the section itself. You will find various other acts. Predicate crime is predicate crime of the underlying generates a process of crime. Suppose if the predicate offense is not listed in the particular act, either in the Indian Act or the US Act or the UK Act, then it will not attract the money laundering offense. So to tell you an example, under Indian law, there are three acts which are major are not part of the predicate offense or scheduled offense. For example, the SEMA is not part of the scheduled offense or predicate offense. Then Income Tax Act is also not part of the scheduled offense. Then we have this GST or the earlier Central Excise Law or the Service Tax Act, which are not part of the scheduled offense. However, there is the investigating agencies are coming in a backdoor mode, which I will discuss later, to even attract these crimes which are not listed in part of the schedule. In fact, the income tax offences are not listed in the part of the schedule. Then the other the central excise GST offences are not part of the schedule, but still they are coming to bring it under schedule by a connection to the IPC. When POC, when the offense proceeds of crime is nothing but the proceeds which are generated from the, for example, smuggling or corruption activities or drug NDPS Act or drug smuggling or IPC offences 420. All these offences generate, for example, murder, kidnapping, a lot of offences are trademark offences, patent offences, copyright offences, wildlife act offences. All these offences generate proceeds of crime which are laundered. When they are laundered, it comes into the ambit of money laundering offense. So money laundering offense is a derivative offense. If you see the predicate, there has to be a predicate offense, there has to be a money laundering offense. Without predicate offense, it is not a standalone. In fact, now the law is taking a different stand. In fact, from the year 2013 onwards, 2018, there were changes in the PMLA. Now currently under 2019, the law has undergone, as far as India is concerned, it has undergone a very drastic change, stating that money laundering offense can be tried as a standalone offense. So that I will discuss not now, at the later part of the slide, but only when you understand the basics of. Now if I say what is standalone, you may not be knowing it. So it is a derivative offense. What I am against this concept called standalone offense, that is, in the absence of predicate offense or in the absence of a scheduled offense, the authorities trying the money laundering offense as a standalone is not collecting law, especially in the in the lines of the mandate laid down under international conventions and other treaties and other bilateral conventions. So it is money laundering offense is always stated to be as a derivative offense. Why? Because it is derivative of the offense which is a main offense is a predicate offense. Hence, the money laundering offense is a derivative offense. Next slide, please. So the three money laundering process, again coming back to the washing machine. This, in fact, the researchers from time immemorial, still this particular three stages is adopted. You will find when you go through the many decisions of the Honorable High Courts, various jurisdictional High Court, including the Supreme Court, they will also discuss about the three stages of money laundering process. First is the placement stage, second is the layering stage, and third is the integration stage. As I told you, in the washing cycle, the three stages of washing cycle is that. So placement stage is the stage where the laundering of proceeds of crime is vulnerable from being traced out. So beyond, from the placement stage, when it goes to the layering stage, it is very difficult. And at the integration stage, it is not possible for any authority to find out how whose proceeds are these money, or from whom to whom it belongs. Very difficult to integration stage. In fact, even a very well trained investigator or a well-trained lawyer or well-trained PP, it is very difficult to even point out at the integration stage to whom the money belongs. Placement happens at the financial institution stage. Normally, keeping the money in Almirah or bureau and the box, pink note, Gandhi note is not going to help any money laundering, because he will always, as I told you, leaving money is vulnerable. It will lead to investigation and later inquiry by the authorities. So placement is where the money is placed into the financial system. It may be financial system, which is formal banking system, or the informal banking system like Hawala. In fact, Hawala, people used to say it is most trusted in the world. In fact, with 0.1%, in fact, you can trust Hawala operator more than your mother. So the placement stage is a vulnerable stage. So here, the money launderers adopt a strategy called smurfing. Smurfing is keeping it below the reportable limit. When you go to a bank, you will find just a small notice. Whoever deposits more than 50,000 rupees has to give his PAN number or something else. In fact, when we are dealing with a money laundering case, accused was found depositing 49,000 rupees in various bank accounts held by him. So when the officers questioned him, he was telling them in statement that as per my auditor's advice, I have placed 49. The idea behind it, smurfing is, this has been followed in all other countries. Whenever you deposit a particular amount less than that money, which is the criteria for reporting, it will avoid a red flag or a trigger. So that is a placement stage. So without placing into the financial system, it is not possible to back to the same country or some other country. So the layering stage is the next stage. In fact, layering stage happens, where by click of a mouse, this money, illicit money, which is, for example, I place this money. For example, criminal places of money in HSBC BC Bank in Mumbai. So assume that various banks in Mumbai is placing around 10 to 20 lakhs. So the next day, he will just transfer this by click of a mouse. He will transfer to the various jurisdictions around the globe. You will transfer it to UK, you will transfer it to Germany, you will transfer it to especially tax havens. Tax havens plays a very crucial role. In fact, they were the havens where they assist the money launderers and they trouble the enforcement agencies, because it is very difficult. Many of the tax havens have walk-in accounts where they even have the intimation. They have a standing instruction. Whenever there is an inquiry from any agency, you alert me. The banker will alert this the offender. Within seconds of alerting the offender, they will transfer that money. For example, it is in Luxembourg. It will immediately, when there is an inquiry in Luxembourg, they will alert that the offender and immediately transfer that money to another tax haven, for example, Bahamas. So it is difficult for us. So on a single day, this layering process, in fact, when we see this many prosecution complaints and many proceedings by the authorities, you will find this mind-boggling. It is impossible. Room put think layering is such a huge. In fact, maybe with the assistance or connivance of a charter accountant, well planned. So accounting norms are very important. So this layering is happening. So layering this purpose of layering is to remove the trail from the offender to the money. So you will never know the offender in Mumbai is the person whose money is there in other country. Finally, integration stage is the stage where next slide, please. I will briefly explain these three stages in example. So this is overall picture of how the transaction of placement, layering, and integration takes place in the money laundering system. This you can go through later also. Next slide, please. There is an example which I have referred. Yes. This small example will tell you how the money laundering takes place. This simple example which I is quoted by an author. So you assume that a drug offender he has, let us say, he has $1 lakh with him. He goes to a casino. In fact, in India, I believe that there is a casino only in Goa and somewhere in some are very few casinos. In other countries, you will find a lot of casinos. So he gambles in the casinos. He may win or he may lose. He will try to manipulate that as if he has taken 1 lakh, and he will get in return maybe 10 lakh. Whether he wins or not, nobody knows. God alone knows. So this 10 lakh, he will direct the casino to deposit. In casinos, the money is taken back in chips form. So he will direct them to deposit into his bank account. So if the bank questions or if any agency questions at a later date, the casino will respond to the banker saying that this fellow has gained. This is only by a gain in the casino. The gain in the casino is not a offense, criminal offense or predicate offense. It is only a gambling. I am telling you this gambling in countries which allow gambling, which is not a predicate offense or which is not a predicate. So, but drug trafficking is offense in all the countries toward the world. So here you will find the drug proceeds of $1 lakh are converted in the casino to $10 lakh and deposited into the bank account. Just an example. So from that money which is deposited in the bank account, let us assume that he is buying a Mercedes-Benz car or a Maruti car. Then it is integrated. So you will find in this case, the predicate offense is the drug or the narcotics which is dealt by the person. Next is the money laundering offense is disguising the origin of the particular criminal process. So he disguises the origin of the drug proceeds as if it is gained from winning through gambling in the casino. This is disguising or removing the taint of the crime process. Next, placement stage. Placement stage is the stage at which the money is placed in the casino for conversion into legitimate money. So he plays the $1 lakh because casino accepts. No, you don't go to a casino and give you either open check or a DD, or you don't use your credit card and debit card to swipe. So normally all these many places where the cash only operates as a tender of money. Next is the layering stage. So the layering stage is the winnings from the casino is converted into the bank account of the drug peddler. as a legitimate. So this lagging happens from casino to the bank account. This lagging. Next is integration stage is the property which is acquired by the buyer by issuing a check, open check. As the transaction will be law-abiding transaction where he will be buying a Maruti car, a Benz car, or Audi car, where he will be able to show the source of income as from his bank account, which is nothing but winning from the. So only you have to, if you go back to the trail, it is very difficult to find whether the from the casino that the entire money is from proceeds of crime, that is proceeds of drug. Next slide, please. So this money laundering process is not new. In fact, 3,000 years ago, in Chinese, the traders used to move their money. It is not laundering purpose. They want to keep slave. They are afraid of their king. They were moving their funds out of their jurisdiction to hide, to avoid forfeiture by their king. In fact, as I told you earlier, there's a mafia group, laundromats, we have already discussed in the first slide. Next is Al Capone. Al Capone is a very dreaded Colombian drug lord. In fact, in US, researchers say he was, being a drug lord, very difficult to catch a drug lord. You will not know, even in smuggling or a narcotics case, you will never know, like in an Nayagan movie, you will never know who is the real Nayagan behind that smuggling or drug this thing. You will only be finding the lowest career or kurvi. So here, the Al Capone was never caught on a drug offense. In fact, he was only caught by the US agencies for a prohibition offense, for not trading in alcohol-laced drug, 0.5% alcohol drug. So here, the researchers say what could not be done by officers carrying guns and ammunition was rather done by the officers sitting behind desk, like indict him for the drug peddling efforts. Next slide, please. So these are all the definitions which which are just so the definitions may look difficult for a layman. Just to understand what is that, we have to see what is the money laundering definition. I am not going into the definition. In fact, I have not put the definitions, tougher definitions, light definition. You see, this United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime says process by which a person conceals or disguises the identity or origin of illegally obtained. First of all, he has to disguise or conceal the origin of illegally obtained proceeds. Like in the example, illegally obtained proceeds may be from drug, or maybe from corruption, or maybe from the smuggling activity, or maybe from IPR related offenses, appear to have originated from legitimate sources. Again, for example, the lawyer example, I told my own example where I've struggled and got 1 crore worth of money, which even if I pay income tax, officer will allow, under Income Tax Act, any income is an income, whether it is an income from, if I declare it in other source of income, the certificate, you will just take it. If I pay 30% tax, and it's a matter, I will get a certificate, not that. So I will have to I will show it as coming from, originating from legitimate source. That is why I am creating accommodation entries on invoice to show that these are all deducted from my professional income. I will put Viswanathan, Satish Sundar, for example, just I have taken while rendering service for some, let us say, even for PMLA, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, some service. So I will try to, here it is the proceeds of crime are shown as generated from professional income, which is a genuine source, which is not a predicate offense or the PMLA. Next is processing of criminal proceeds to disguise their illegal origin in order to legitimize the ill-gotten gains of. So, disguise the origin. The main idea behind any money laundering is to disguise the origin of funds, because once we can see the example of the casino drug peddler. Is Maruti car, the source of the Maruti car or the BMW car is the drug related money which he received. But there is no trial. It is difficult because it has gone from at the casino stage itself. There is no chance of having any evidence or trial. The placement, layering, and at the stage of interrogation, if you can't go back to the reverse method. If you go to the reverse method, it will not be possible even with the toughest investigators and law enforcement. It's very difficult. That is why these 3 stages are adopted. So the next slide, please. This another US Customs definition says, there I have just marked, derived from criminal activity, purpose of concealing or disguising. So intermingled with the legitimate funds, converted or intermingled with legitimate. The entire proceeds, either illegal proceeds or illicit gain, or the predicate offense proceeds of crime are intermingled. For example, an offender, a drug offender, or an offender, a person who was earned money by corruption, prevention of corruption, or offender. He has got ill-gotten wealth of around 5 crores. He buys a property. The property is worth, let us say, it is 6 crore worth of property. He has 5 crore worth of money, which is black money in his hand. Here, he may be having the, let us assume that he is having the 5 crore money in cash, 2000 notes, pink notes in his cash. There is no need for him to even go in for placement, layering, and interrogation. Suppose he finds a buyer, for example, he finds a seller of the property who is ready to ready to accept this 5 crore black money, because he doesn't want to, the seller doesn't want to account this money. The seller doesn't want to pay the registration fee. The buyer also doesn't want to involve it. So here the property worth of 6 crore is purchased by the buyer by transferring his 5 crore ill-gotten money to the seller. Seller receives that and he is happy going. So he will he need not pay income tax. He will just use it as it own. Here you will find the property will be undervalued. The property worth 6 crore will be undervalued for 1 crore. This happens. This is called intermingling of process of crime. So it need not be, the proportion need not be full. It may be a part, 20%, 30%. Normally, this type of transactions are happening as far as money laundering process is concerned. Next slide, please. So now we will go to the real scenario of how the PMLA operates, So as I told you, you need to have a scheduled offense. You need to have only without a scheduled offense. Scheduled offense is a mother of predicate, mother of money laundering offense. Scheduled offense or a predicate offense is a mother of money laundering offense. Without mother, there can't be a child. So you can't imagine a child without a mother. But the law now taking a course of standalone money laundering without even a test tube baby need to have a mother. So first of all, scheduled offense has to be there. If scheduled offense, as I told you earlier, the scheduled offense is not listed under the PMLA, then there is no, the enforcement directorate or the agency cannot come inside. So for example, income tax offense or GST offense or a FEMA offense. These are 3 offenses cannot be part of the PMLA proceedings because they are out of the schedule. They are not listed till date under scheduled offense. Scheduled offense, if you go through they are there in the later part of the slide. Just to brief you, there are 29 acts or 29 bad acts are listed under Part A, and 1 bad act is listed under Part B. Part B relates to threshold offense. We will see that later. Part C of the schedule relates to inter-country, inter-jurisdictional transaction, where the transaction occur beyond borders. This is only to generate attachment properties situated elsewhere in the globe. So first of all, there has to be scheduled offense. So the trigger is scheduled offense, very important. Without scheduled offense, you can't have a money laundering offense. First of all, you should have if it is somebody takes he commits offense under Prevention of Corruption Act. There has to be a FIR by the CBI or the police or someone else. There is a IPC offense. There has to be a FIR by the police or some other agency. There is a customs offense, or there is a copyright offense. There is a Wildlife Act offense. So first of all, the scheduled offense or the predicate offense, there has to be FIR. Then there has to be investigation. This investigation next stage of investigation may lead to a prosecution complaint. Then there will be a trial. This trial may lead to a conviction or acquittal. If you see, now what you are talking about in this slide is scheduled offense only. We are not talking about this scheduled offense is not. Please keep it in mind. This scheduled offense is not at all covered under the PMLA Act. Only Section 44 says both the scheduled offense and the money laundering offense shall be tried by the same court as far as possible. It says, but it is not hard and fast rule. We have seen in many cases where the scheduled offense is tried by a court in Madurai, while the money laundering offense is tried by a court in Chennai, Principal Session Judge Court. In fact, even in Chennai also some scheduled offense are tried by a CBI court. In Chennai, next building, some of money laundering offense for the very same connected is tried by a PSJ court. So there is no, in fact, if you see, I will try to quote a decided case law, 2G scam, Raja scam, where the scheduled offense and the money laundering offense was tried by the same judge, Justice O.P. Saini tried the same scheduled offense and money laundering offense. He acquitted the accused in the scheduled offense. Consequently, next when he passes an order for the money laundering offense, he acquitted them for the money laundering offense. But of course, the department has filed an appeal against that. At that time, at the relevant time, the acquittal under the scheduled offense, the money laundering offense goes. After This happened in the year 2000. After 2012, there was an amendment in PMLA which says, irrespective of the no acquittal in the schedule offense, the money laundering offense will continue. This 2G is, the decision was rendered prior to the amendment. So this is separate. This, in fact, if a schedule offense, here there is no role for the agencies under PMLA to play. In fact, as far as PMLA is concerned, the prosecution is taken care of by the Enforcement Directorate, because they are the only authority who are authorized to investigate from the stage of filing the ECIR to the end of prosecution. So Enforcement Directorate will take care of the PMLA offense cases, whereas the schedule offense cases will be dealt by the various, like for example, it may be dealt by the local police as far as IPC is concerned. It may be dealt by the CBA, if there is a CBA related crime, or if there is a banking fraud, we have the banking BSNFC branch in Bangalore which takes care of banking fraud offences, or it may be SFIO, Serious Frauds Investigation Office. Recently in ILFS scam in Mumbai, you have seen the SFIO has filed a scheduled offence before the court in Mumbai against ILFS scam. So here the Serious Frauds Investigation Office, by virtue of powers under section 447 of the Companies Act, they have filed a FIR. So FIR equivalent to FIR they have filed. So the schedule offence will be tried not by the Enforcement Directorate authority, but by the police. Next slide, please. Police or other agencies. So actually this should come as a PMLA offence, the title. Kindly read the top schedule. It is not a pretty, it's a PMLA offence. From FIR stage, how it comes to PMLA. So first of all, there has to be a trigger. As I told you, trigger for a PMLA offence is the FIR. So in fact, I was told that there is no, in fact, you will be knowing that Enforcement Directorate is outside the purview of RTA. So none of the information is available in public domain. So unless the case is even when the disputes are contested before adjudicating authority, none of the, only at the appellate tribunal and high court level, when issues litigated, the case come into public domain, you will know what is happening and what is the real is attached in the trade. So I was informed that once an FIR is lodged by either by police or CBA, automatically a copy of the same is endorsed to the Enforcement Directorate of the respective jurisdiction. So in the Enforcement Directorate, ECIR is equal to FIR. So it will have the same format. I am not going into details. Same format of details containing FIR. ECIR is nothing but Enforcement Case Information Report. This is filed under PMLA. This has to be prepared by IO, maybe Asset Director or a Deputy Director, and it will be countersigned by the Joint Director. Next, investigation will commence. So investigation will commence, then the authorities. So once the ECIR stage, now the government is, the authorities and the government are very, very alert now. In fact, the next day, earlier it takes time. In fact, after the FIR is lodged, the next day ECIR is prepared. Why? Because once the ECIR is prepared, there is a you will be knowing that LOC, lookout circular is issued, especially when the offenders are, there is every chance of flight risk for the offenders.
Krishna Kumar sir. Sir, we are unable to hear you, sir. I think there is some network issue there. We'll wait.
See it? Okay.
Yes,
I'm able to hear you, Prithvi.
Yes, sir. From Vishwanathan's phone, I think we can hear you, sir, now. From Vishwanathan sir's phone, we can hear you, sir. So can you hear me?
No problem. I'll proceed. Now ECR and investigation.
Yes, sir.
Now after ECR, there will be investigation by the agencies. Now investigation by the agencies, they will summon. Section 50, the authorities will summon. So at the time of investigation, they will try to identify the proceeds of crime. So the proceeds of crime is very important. Now identify the proceeds of crime. We'll see that later. Proceeds of crime may be properties which are movable, immovable properties in the form of bank deposits or demat accounts, or it can be tangible, intangible, any kind of property. So identification is very important. Why? Because once the proceeds of crime are identified, the authorities have to immediately attach the properties to avoid this properties being siphoned off by the criminals. Next is provisional attachment. As I told you, provisional attachment is there in other statutes also. We have the provisional attachment in central excise law, in customs law, and also in GST law, and also in other enactment, fiscal enactment. This provisional attachment is very, very crucial. So why? Because if the proceeds of crime are not attached, because the trial takes around 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. The scheduled offence trial as well as money laundering offence trial takes a lot of years. So by the time if the authorities wait, they alone, the offender will not be a fool to leave or give the proceeds of crime in a platter for the authority to confiscate. So to frustrate, if the criminals go to frustrate the procedure, the action by the provisional attachment is done. Next comes confiscation. So at the end of the trial, of scheduled offence or money laundering offence trial, the properties may be, depending on the outcome of the trial, it may be either confiscated or released to the person entitled to. So money laundering offence. Similarly, there are two types. As I told you, the two offences, two trials will be conducted. One will be the scheduled offence trial, and the second will be the money laundering offence trial. Normally it will be, so there is no concurrent trial. No, it is not like that on a day-to-day basis they will hear the money laundering case. Normally in practice, as you have seen in the 2G scam, also in the Satyam scam, where the Ramalinga Raju was already convicted for the scheduled offence. Now the money laundering trial is undergoing. So first they will try to, for all purpose, they will try to finish the scheduled offence trial. Next, if it is the same court, next they will take up the money laundering offence trial. So if it is a different court, it depends on the, there are instances where the money laundering offence trial has been completed, and we have a case where the money laundering offence, the person has been convicted, but still the scheduled offence is pending. So finally, based on the acquittal or conviction, the property attached will see the fate. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next. Yes. Are you able to hear me? Okay. Section 2(1)(u). Proceeds of crime. Section 2(1)(u) defines what is process of crime. Section 2(1)(5) defines what is scheduled offence. So as I have told you, proceeds of crime is a very important definition. 2(1)(u), you can see it has undergone a lot of changes in the statute currently, especially the Finance Act 2019. So if you see the schedule offence, two subclass ones, 2(1)(y), part A of the Act contains 29 enactments. If you go through 29 enactments or 29 different acts. So earlier, the reason, rationale behind the segregation or bifurcation of offence into Part A and Part B and Part C. Initially, Part A offences were serious in nature. So the IPC offence were subdivided into Part A as well as Part B. So later on, the legislation changed from Part B. Initially, the intention of the legislation was to keep mild offences under Part B and keep the serious offences under Part A. In fact, earlier they had the threshold limit. In fact, if you see, threshold limit is below the limit of a particular limit, there is no, the authorities will not file any. So this threshold limit earlier, it was 5 lakhs was kept for the Part B. That was subjected by the Financial Action Task Force. In fact, Financial Action Task Force reviews all the legislation of all the countries throughout the world. So in India, the FATF reviewed the legislation in the year 2010 and found out sufficient compliance of PMA. In fact, India has got a good rating from as far as FATF. Based on a lot of suggestions, they found out a lot of lacunas in the law. They found out a lot of improvements in the PMLA. So those were rectified by way of amendment in the year 2013. So the amendment bill was moved in the year 2012, and 2013 all the loopholes are plugged. So the Part B area, the threshold was 5 lakhs. Later on it was changed. Again it was brought back. Currently section 135 offences, that is part of section 135 of Navish, now 135 is part of the so false declaration, everything is part of part B. Here, the threshold limit is 1 crore or more. Suppose why the legislature want to keep this 1 crore, but there may be a false entry, false declaration as a bill of entry or any document. So there may be a bill of entry worth 1 lakh, 5 lakh, 50,000. So if the threshold limit is not kept, the agency has to book cases ECR for all the cases. That is, they have kept the threshold limit of 1 crore. So in other words, for offences under section 135 of the Act, the threshold limit of 1 crore, they may bring other enactments also. Tomorrow, for example, they may bring Income Tax Act also, or they may bring FEMA also. By keeping the very same limit, they may even bring a GST Act also, saying that there is a threshold limit of 5 crore. There is a threshold limit of 10 crore for income tax also, because it is difficult. So if without limit, the agency is compelled to register a case for each and every small violation. Part A, as I tell you, 29 acts or 29 legislation which is covered under the schedule. Part C relates to cross-border offences. This is enabled. Why? Because properties are there. Is not the authorities in India cannot attach the property which is situated outside. Due to the relation by way of procedure under PMLA, the lower court in India will issue a letter regulatory to the court in other countries like UK or USA. This has been done in the famous case of people who are fighting their case outside in UK. So the by way of LR, the authorities, after identifying the proceeds of crime in other countries, they will issue instructions to the authorities to attach them in the other countries. So cross-border offences, any offences which irrespective of threshold, all offences will come under. It may be in Part A or Part B, but again only for the enactments under Part A and Part B. It doesn't mean that the Part C cross-border offence will come to Act which is not at all part of schedule. It has to be part of the scheduled offence, then only it will come under Part C. So cross-border offence will come under Part C. Next, chapter 17 of IPC, where the property related issues also is coming under Part C. Next is Black Money Act 2015 also will come under, because this Black Money Act has got a link with the amounts which are held abroad, where in other countries. So naturally the assistance of other countries courts are required. Next, section 3 deals with offence of, these are all the important provisions. Section 3 deals with the offence of money laundering, like what you call as charging section under the taxing statute. This is the offence. This is a very important section. Unless a person has to be proved to be guilty of offence under section 3, then only he will be punishable for offence under section 4. So section 3 is very important. Next comes section 5 is attachment. Attachment of properties. This is called as civil proceedings. Attachment is done by the investigating agency, deputy director of the enforcement directorate, not below the rank of deputy director, will issue the provisional attachment order. The assistant director is not in power. Only the deputy director and above is empowered to provisionally attach the properties, which will be subject to process of adjudication. Next slide, please. So adjudication. So adjudication, provisional attachment. Section 8 deals adjudication, provisional attachment of property. There will be in FIR, if you see, there will be estimate of proceeds of crime. FIR, for example, there is a banking fraud which is registered by CBI, or IPC fraud which is registered by police. They will approximately say what are the proceeds, what is the extent of offence committed by the offender. Similarly, the ECAR will also have a 200 crore violation. There is a violation of 200 crore, 300 crore, 500 crore. This is estimated proceeds of crime. We can say this is estimate. It can be a guesstimate also, because over the period it may increase or it may decrease also, because it is not possible to identify. No criminal will have things written in his diary or his mobile phone, his laptop, that what are all the list of properties, what is the estimated market value of the same. So it is very difficult. Authorities also now, they are finding it difficult to find out proceeds of crime. In many cases, the proceeds of crime which have come to their notice may be 10% or 20%, or it may be 1%, or it may be 50%, depends on the case. Next is retention of property. Adjudication also deals with retention of property. Retention of property is retention of property is are you able to hear me, Prithvi? Retention of property is relating to retention of property. In fact, Proceeds of crime is different, retention of property is different. If you see the Customs Act, Central Excise Act, Income Tax, whenever no officer or authority searches and raids business premises or a residential premise, the records or the documents seized can be retained without any permission. There is no, once the records are seized, if they are relied upon document RUD, they will be retained till the end of the case. There is no chance of getting a permission or approval from the higher authority. But under PMLA, they have given us, they have brought in an inbuilt safeguard in the mechanism where even for retention of the records, the authority has to get the approval of the adjudicating authority. In other words, without the approval by the adjudicating authority is an independent authority. We'll see that later. Is the authority sitting at New Delhi. New Delhi, there is only one authority as far as India is concerned. The authority is sitting at New Delhi, whereas the investigating agencies are spread throughout India. So the retention of records may be a retention of records like books or files or any other thing. It also instrumentalities of crime, like instrumentalities of crime like iPad, laptop. In fact, laptop, iPad, mobile phones, iPhone, everything, they contain a lot of information. Chats, WhatsApp chats, various chats where the link or trail of the washing, money laundering process, the trail of the proceeds of crime or the evidence related to the commission of crime, either the scheduled offense or the money laundering offense are required by the agencies as a proof of evidence, either in the court of law relating to scheduled offense or money laundering offense. So the retention of records, in fact, we have witnessed a case where the in one of the case, a laptop of a person was seized, actually for an offense committed by him in a style company 5 years back. But the laptop seized was relating to a new company where it has nothing to do with the offense. So he moved an application before the authority and said that this has nothing to do with the offense committed in the earlier, this is 5 years back. This is given by a new company, X company, which has got a very good standing in the society. So they are having, I am facing a lot of problem by seizure of, because the confidential matters are there. Finally, the authority gave no permission to clone the data, hard disk data, and return the laptop to the concerned. So there is also, so it is for the authority to pass orders for retention of the records and property. Property means here retention of record and property is not retention of property which are proceeds of crime. Retention of property like iPad, iPhone, or laptops. These are all different. So here you will find one fine future in the PMLA where even for retention of record, you have to get the approval of the authority. So if the authority says this, the records can be retained till investigation or trial, it will be retained by the authorities. Next is Section 9. Section 9 gives the power of the vests the power of the central government to at the finally when the property is confiscated, the property vests with central government proof from all encumbrance. There won't be any encumbrance for whatsoever it may be. Next is 19 is power to arrest. I'm not going deeper into that. Power to arrest is given to the officers under the Enforcement Directorate. Of course, for arrest, the provisions under CRPC have to be followed necessarily. The law also, Section 19 also will say. You will find one thing, we'll come to that later in the slide. Section 65 of that says the provisions of CRPC will apply as far as they are not inconsistent with PMLA. In other words, if there are special provisions under the PMLA will overrule the CRPC. So only if they, like in 19 arrests, the PMLA, the CRPC will apply. As far as, but bail under PMLA will always be governed by Section 45 of PMLA, not by CRPC. Though it has to be, though the petitioners and the lawyers argue, they file the bail application under CRPC or they argue the case, the format may be same, but unless the stint condition mentioned under Section 45 is followed, it cannot take recourse to CRPC, because being a special enactment, especially because of the overriding provision under 71 as well as Section 70. Section 65 says like this. Next is 44, trial by special court. As I told you, special court will try the offences of money laundering as well as scheduled offence. Both the trial, it may be conducted simultaneously or it may be conducted separately or it may be tried by two different courts also. But the law says if they are tried by two different courts, for example, scheduled offence is tried by one court and money laundering offence is tried by another court. Let us say in Chennai CBI, and the scheduled offence tried by CBI court and money laundering offence by PSJ court in Chennai. The law says on application moved by the Enforcement Directorate, it can be transferred to a single court. So again, there is nothing wrong in the different code being said, but as far as possible, both are tried by a separate code. Next is 45. Offenses are cognizable and non-bailable. This has created a lot of heat generated in this. In fact, there was a debate going on. We'll see that in the later part of the slides. Now all the debates are put to academic rest by way of amendment in Finance Act 2019. If you see up to 2019, you will find many of the amendments were moved through Finance Act from 2012. So normally, you will not find the normally fiscal statute only will be there part of the Finance Act. Now from 2012-13 onwards, currently only in the year 2020, no amendment was carried out in PMLA, either through Finance Act or through another. So after the, in fact, from as far as the 19 amendment is concerned, they have plugged all the loopholes, all the lacunas, all the doubts as far as the PMLA is concerned. It's a soundproof. The next slide, please. It's a soundproof enactment as far as the agencies are concerned. Next slide, please. Yes, section 2P says money laundering. So now you will not find, as my professor used to say, law will not directly define what is. Will not normally it will not define directly, because it will not say income means, as we are having Mr. G. Swaminathan's lecture, means, includes, definition. Because all law has to evolve, especially a special enactment like PMLA has to evolve through various stages, like judicial debates, parliamentary debates, then whatever the errors or the mistakes knowingly, unknowingly committed has to evolve only over a period. So section 2P says money laundering as defined under section 3. So section 3 I have reproduced. Whoever, it uses the word whoever directly or indirectly attempts to indulge or knowingly assists. Now, if you see the word knowingly is whoever is, that means anybody. It need not be a offender. It can be anybody. It can be his lawyer. It can be his charter accountant. It can be his driver. Offender. You will not say, I am a lawyer. I have a fiduciary relationship. You can't. Unless if you have to come out. Suppose if you are now called upon to answer, you have to knowingly. That is why the law uses the word knowingly. There is a lot of debate going on. In fact, I remember Mr. Ramachandran Pillai. Excellent. He said that there has to be a safeguard mechanism in the law. During the Rajya Sabha review of that particular PMLA enactment in the year 1999, he said knowingly, so that the innocent is not being victimized under the law. So knowingly assists or knowingly a party or is actually involved. So knowingly is used in several times. So basically, though a person may be charged, because at the time of charge or at the time of issue of notice, the law authority cannot be deciding the fact itself. So it is let alone for the other quasi-judicial or judicial forum to decide the person is involved for offense under section 3. And projecting or claiming it as untainted property. So there are, if you see, through limb of definition under section 3. First of all, directly involving, attempting to, who directly or indirectly involving, knowingly assisting, and projecting or claiming it as untainted property. So this also has to be satisfied. Projecting or and claiming it. And now, normally nobody will say that this is tainted property. No, if anybody says openly declares either in newspaper or by a WhatsApp video that I am having a tainted property, next day it will be seized. So normally nobody will go in and proclaim that it is a tainted property. So there was, in fact, a student during a session asked me a question. How I suppose I say that it is a tainted property. What is that? Can you attach the property? Because it says unprojecting or claiming it as only when you property, it will come under the ambit of section 3. Now this ambiguity has also been removed. I am not going deeper into this because you need to understand, but I am just giving you a loophole, the hint that you can, the explanation 1 to 1 inserted by Finance Act now clarifies the position. So as per the explanation 1 introduced by the Finance Act 2019, it says there is no need for him to project. So even if you project it as untainted also, you will be coming under, for this moment, try to understand, just even though the law says unproject it, even without projecting it as untainted, it will still be. In fact, that was a very good question. In fact, initially I was confused. Then after seeing this amendment in the 2019, it shows that even any process of money laundering will come under the purview of section 3, irrespective of projecting it as untainted. But even if we don't project it as untainted also, if we say it is tainted, openly comes and says it is tainted just to come out of the PMLA, it will be still coming come as an offense under section 3. Next slide, please. I have explained the section 3. See, just ignore section 3 only. Attempts. It is an attempt to indulge in process or activity. So this first is attempt by the person concerned. It may be attempt by, here the law does not say attempt. Whoever we have seen, whoever. It may be a money launderer. It may be a scheduled offender. It may be any other person. You will find a lot of persons. It may be a banker. It may be a bank officer. It may be a bona fide third party. It may be a bona fide purchaser. It may be a accountant of the purchaser. It may be a lawyer. It may be a chartered accountant. Anybody. So attempts to indulge in attempts. It is attempt. Next is knowingly assist. Only when he knowingly assists in process or activity relating to POC is process of crime. Relating to process of crime. Next, knowingly is a party. Knowingly assisting. Knowingly is a party. Next is actually involvement. Actual involvement in money laundering. Last is projecting as in claiming it as untainted property. I say you, even if you don't project it as untainted property, also still is coming under the ambit of explanation. As no, the legislature cleverly brought. If you see all the amendments, proposals which are moved under Finance Act 2019 were brought by way of explanation. We had seen earlier class also under income tax and other enactment. Whenever a statute brings in an explanation, you all be knowing as a fiscal experts, this dates back to the origin of the section. So it is only explaining the intention of the statute. So even if anybody says I have not projected as tainted, I am only projecting untainted, I am projecting as only untainted, you will still be caught under the explanation 1, which will have application from origin of section 3. Now section 4 deals with punishment. So the minimum punishment is 3 years and maximum punishment is 7 years, and it may go up to 10 years as far as NDPS offense is concerned. There is also a fine of fine will be determined by the trial court. Actually, the fine is not imposed by the adjudicating authority. Fine will be determined by the, this fine what we are speaking is a fine imposed by the trial court at the time of trial of money laundering offense. We are not concerned with, don't try to understand. We are now, what we are concerned with the entire slides are money laundering offense only. We are not concerned with the scheduled offense. We are not concerned with the, there is no scheduled offense will go off separately, that will be tried under respective enactment. For example, it's a PC offense, IPC offense, IPR offense, or copyright offense, that will be tried separately by the trial court. For the money laundering offense, the money laundering trial court may award imprisonment, may acquit the person, whoever is concerned, or it may impose a imprisonment of 3 years and a maximum of 7 years, and also a fine. Fine is unlimited. So it depends on the, earlier the law gave it 5 lakhs for the fine. The FATF said, no, it is, you can't fix such a pittance fine. So the law has been amended. Now the fine will be determined by the trial court under section 45 of the Act. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide.
So 1 minute.
Raja. Yes. Oh. Next, I think it has gone back.
So next slide.
Section 8 adjudication, I think next.
I think it is section 5, sir.
Yeah, section 5.
Section 5.
Yeah. Okay. So section 5, section 5, any person, actually section 5 is a very important provision as far as provisional attachment is concerned. There are 2 wings under section 5.1. So any person, first of all, it says any person should be in possession of proceeds of crime, and such proceeds of crime are likely to be concealed, transferred, or dealt with to frustrate any action under the Act. So first of all, the person concerned has to be in possession of proceeds of crime, and secondly, that these proceeds of crime are are likely to be concealed, diverted, or disposed of, proceeding the proceedings under the Act. Proceeding under means confiscation and the final seizure, confiscation, and other proceedings under the Act. So here the authorities are empowered to provisionally attach the property. So there are two methods of attachment. So the first says, first provision, there is one type of attachment after 173. A report under 173 of CRPC is first provision to section 51 says, after this is like this for the scheduled offense. When a report for scheduled offense is filed by the respective authority and before the trial court, the scheduled offense trial court under section 173 of CRPC, the process of can be attached. So what? So the question may come to you. So what if the agency, a particular agency, a police or a CBI delays knowingly or unknowingly, wantonly or unwantedly? Suppose normally in the investigation stages, it takes 2 years, 3 years, 5 years for the agencies to file a charge sheet, even file a report. So it takes time. So if such a scenario arises, in the meantime, with the accused parts with the process of crime, what will happen? So the government felt there is a need, urgent need. So they brought in a second provision, which says if the authority has reasons to believe, this reasons to believe has to be recorded in writing. If the deputy director or the deputy director is the authority who is empowered to attach the property under PML. If the deputy director has reasons to believe that the person concerned is likely to conceal, transfer, or siphon off the proceeds of crime, and if such attachment is not done immediately, it may frustrate the proceedings of confiscation under the Act. He or she may immediately attach. So many of the attachment, if you see under the PMLA, are done by invoking second provision of section 51. So in other words, the authority need not pay for any any charge sheet or any report filed before the trial court. So even after the ECAR stage, for example, FIR is filed last month. ECAR is filed in the month of May. Assume that in the month of March they have filed FIR. April the authority has filed ECAR. So in April, if the authority has identified the process of crime, this month itself the authority can attach the process of crime. Next is this attachment is for a period of 180 days. As I told you, these again inbuilt mechanism given by the statute, because within this 180 days, this attachment is placed before the authority concerned. Adjudicating authority, it comes under section 8, because to avoid any unilateral or malified action by the authority concerned, it has to pass through the test under law. Inbuilt mechanism is there. So this provisional attachment is subject to review by authority under section 8, then review by appellate tribunal under section 26, then review by high courts under section 42. That is inbuilt mechanism under section 51. So this authority will file it before. So within 30 days of attachment, this will be placed before the adjudicating authority by way of a complaint. So the provisional attachment order is referred to as PAO, provisional attachment order, PAO. This will be placed before authority who is in PMLA authority in New Delhi. Next, please. So adjudicating authority consists of chairman, member law, and member finance. The adjudicating authority will issue notice to the person concerned on receipt of PAO, provisional attachment or complaint. So provisional attachment and complaint is slightly different. A provisional attachment order is first order which is issued by the authority under section 5.1. Under section 5.5, the complaint will be issued by the authorities. Both are same slightly, but only difference is that it will have further provisional attachment will confine to the properties, movable and immovable properties which are attached by the authorities. Complaint will go a step further and will place the allegations of money laundering and what are the offences. It will go now only the PO, no document will be relied upon. So PO will simple attachment. After within 30 days of attachment, the complaint will be in the form of OC. OC will be issued by the authority, where it will also have an attachment of all the relied upon documents, where the PAO will also form part of the relied upon document, apart from statements which are relied by the authorities. So this PO and complaint will be sent to the authorities. To again make it clear, PO will only have the details of properties attached, whereas the complaint will always will also carry out the PAO and also have additional allegations of money laundering against a person concerned. So it will issue to all the person concerned who have to answer. To overall the defendants, they have to answer to the complaint. So complaint will also have relied upon documents, maybe 500 page, 200, 300 page, 1000 page, 2000 page, sometimes structured also. So notice is to be issued to the person concerned, joint owners, person holding the property. So here the law says, as far as to the knowledge of the authority is concerned, especially the DD is concerned, whoever is holding the property, for example, if it is under mortgage, it has to be notice has to be issued to the banker because they are holding a mortgage, because they are supposed to answer. Suppose if it is purchased by a bona fide, let us say, in the meantime the property has been purchased by a bona fide any other third party, suppose that person has also to be issued with a notice. So here, before the authority, the defendants have to disclose the income earning. So if you read section 8, it says they are called upon to show the source of income. If they show the source of income as not proceeds of crime, they will be definitely if the person defendant show that the properties were acquired out of illicit funds, out of genuine sources, the authority is likely to vacate the attachment also. We have seen in some cases also, not that the authority is blindly confirming the attachment. Whenever for instance, a property was attached to a defendant who gave a proof that he has purchased the property by from source. In fact, he has declared all the source to the income tax authority. He has purchased, he has declared all the capital gains. He has everything, all the source of purchase of the particular property has come out of licit income, not from tainted income. Finally, the authority removed the attachment also. Not that it is confirmed mechanically, depends on the thing. So next is after the they confirmed or lift the attachment. Next slide, please. So next 8.4 is taking possession of the property. Next 8.4 is taking possession of the property. So actually, once the adjudicating authority confirms the attachment within 30 days, from the authority, the law says forthwith take possession. This is very crucial. The deputy director of the enforcement directorate will take possession of the property forthwith. So here, on conclude. So this after possession is taken over, it will be kept. Let us say it is kept in abeyance. So it is subject to the conclusion of trial of money laundering offence. You see the provision section 8.5 I have reproduced depends on the trial of money laundering offence. So earlier the provision was reading as scheduled offence trial. In 2G case, the provision at that time was stated if the person is acquitted in the scheduled offence trial, the money laundering trial also has to go, but subsequently they have amended. So if only when the special courts finds the money laundering offence has not been committed, the properties will be released to the person entitled to. So if you see this is done after 8/2/2013, this amendment. So I was just listening to Mr. Om Prakash Ji's lecture on SARFAESI. So the very same word person entitled to, you see the law uses the word person entitled to. It doesn't use the word owner of the property or mortgager of the property or mortgagee or somebody, a person who is residing there, or a person who is in possession. Person entitled to. This has got a very crucial link, because only the person entitled to will be received. Suppose the banker has given loan to the property and he holds a property by which of a secured creditor, he will be the person entitled. Similarly, a third party, a bona fide third party, was purchased the property, and for certain reasons it is not brought into the books and it is not known to the authorities. Suppose later on if it is confiscated, then it will be released only to the person entitled to. Next is special court find money laundering offence. This is negative. No, this is positive. So if the special court finds money laundering offence as committed, there is no question of releasing the property. It stands confiscated to the government, and by virtue of section 9, it will be treated as property of the government. So bona fide. So this is 8.8 is very important. Section 8.8 is confiscation of properties. Bona fide third parties can approach a special court for release of property after trial or during trial. In fact, if you see this provision, the concept behind this provision came into effect only during February 2013 amendment. So prior to that, Justice V.R. Subramaniam J, as an occasion to deliver a judgment, Indian Bank case, it is referred to as Indian Bank case. Later I will try to share you the judgment. There Justice V.R. Subramaniam J said this particular enactment does not take care of the victims of money laundering. For example, in that case, the Indian bank which gave funds, which gave loans to the for purchase of property have become a victim before the court. They said they are rushed up to the court because their property is attached. How can you attach a property which was loaned by the banker where he has become a victim? He quoted one very good example. He said, I will repeat the example in some other thing. Let us say my daughter is kidnapped. Kidnapping is an offense under IPC. IPC is a scheduled offense under Money Laundering Act. Part A scheduled offense is there. Let us say the kidnapper demands 50 lakhs as ransom. So I, as a father, nobody will bother for the money. So it can be earned anytime. So I pay to the kidnapper, though the police are there and they try to trap. Though I pay to the kidnapper to ensure that my daughter is returning safely. I pay to the kidnapper 50 lakhs ransom money. So later on, the police were able to catch the kidnapper along with the money which I lent, 50 lakhs. Here, if you see, this 50 lakh will become proceeds of crime. So this is my money which I paid to the kidnapper only to get my daughter released from the kidnapper. So it is my hard-earned money. It is my genuine money, legitimate money. So by virtue of Part A of PMLA, by virtue of schedule offense, this 50 lakh becomes a proceeds of crime, and it will be attached and confiscated to the government. If such is the case, no common prudent man will try to intimate the just because he will rather settle with the kidnapper because this my money will not come back to me. Then this amendment was brought in, especially after the this is the normally you say it's a judge-made law. Many times you have a judge-made law. You have these benevolent provisions also in after this MODWAT rules where the ITC availed and utilized was changed to and IT utilized or input central credit taken or utilized was changed. Next slide. Next. So section I will rush through because I think I have not seen the watch due to paucity of time. I will rush through. Section 17 takes care of as I've already discussed the proceeds of crime and records. Section 17 empowers the authority to recover records and property relating to crime. This property is instrumentalities of crime as already referred like iPhone or laptop or any other thing. Section 19 as we have already seen. Section 24 burden of proof. There are two segments. As far as the person charged with offense is concerned, unless contrary is proved. If you see, the authority shall presume that proceeds of crime. The rebuttal is on the person accused. As for the person who is charged with offense, unless the contrary is proved, suppose he is the main offender, he has to prove with the burden is on him to prove that. So the word shall is used. As far as the other person is concerned, the authority court may presume. So it is a little benevolent as far as the other person is concerned. Next slide, please. So section 44 is special court. We have already now seen the special court is designated by, as far as Chennai is concerned, principal session judge court is designated as PMLA court for the Chennai jurisdiction is concerned. We already discussed about section 44 trial, whether they have to be, in fact, there is one important, which if time permits, I will later on, in fact, I will see to that later also. Separate courts, the standalone laundering, because I don't have time. I will just skip it later. If time permits, we can discuss. Section 45, offences are cognizable and non-bailable. This has created a lot of litigation in whether the offences are cognizable or non-cognizable or non-cognizable or bailable or non-bailable. In fact, Delhi High Court in the case of Rajbush and Om Prakash Chain. In fact, to tell you trace the history of this section 45, Supreme Court in Nikesh Tarachan case said that party at the time, the law said whenever there is a party offense is involved, bail shall not be granted without the twin conditions to be followed. The law was referring only to party offense. It was differentiating between party and part B offense. Supreme Court struck down the particular provision of section 45 stating that you can't have a differential treatment. You can't say that bail for party offense should be should stand to test by satisfying the two factors. Then the government amended the particular part, section 45 to be registered. They removed the word Part A and said under the act. In other words, that judgment of Nikesh Sarachand was overcome by way of amendment. Initially, it was Part A offences, you can't get a bail. Supreme Court said that is wrong. Then they removed the Part A and said any offence under the act, you can't get a bail unless the twin conditions are satisfied. This again was referred by Delhi High Court Division Bench Justice Muralidhar to larger bench, stating that there are conflicting views of different high courts, stating that whether offences are under PMLA are cognizable or non-cognizable, bailable or non-bailable. They referred to a larger bench. But in the meantime, in Finance Act 2019, they amended by way of explanation, stating that all the offences are non-cognizable and non-bailable. So it has now all the reference to the now larger bench as maybe it may be subject to challenge also future date, but by way of explanation inserted in 45 by way of Finance Act 2009, it says all the offences are meant to be cognizable, meant to be non-bailable. So all the issues are put, all the debates and doubts are put to rest. Next. Next slide, please. So as we have seen, section 65 says this is anyway, I have already discussed. Section 65 says prosecution will the provisions of CRPC will apply as far as they are not inconsistent with the act. For example, I have already discussed as far as arrest, search, seizure, attachment, and all the CRPC will apply. Only certain provisions of the act CRPC will not be applicable and PMLA will overrule. For example, section 35 is very important as far as PMLA is concerned. Only the conditions laid down under section 45 has to be. So we have already seen in the last slide, PP has to give concurrence. No PP will give concurrence for granting of bail. So if the PP opposes the bail, then the court have to satisfy whether the person has prima facie committed an offence under the act, or if he is let out on bail, and if he is let out on bail, he will not commit any other offence, any other criminal offence under the act. So the court will have to weigh these twin factors have to be followed. This 45 is the conditions, two conditions laid out under 45 still have preference for the CRPC, and CRPC will not have any binding precedent on as far as PMLA is concerned. Next to the section 2, this reporting standard, let us not bother. Next slide you have gone. Okay. So this predicate offence. Next slide you can go. No problem. Next slide, please. Next. So this again, I will just rush through this last slide also. Time permits. So we have been discussing now as I told you, income tax is not part of the schedule offence. PEMA is not part of the schedule offence. GST is not part of the schedule offence. You see under two case laws, Sachin Narayan case. In this fact, this was an income tax case which was registered by the income tax authorities, where they also invoked section 120 capital B, criminal conspiracy. 120 capital B was invoked by the income tax authorities. So immediately ECIR was registered by the enforcement directorate. So by way of you see, it is a purely income tax case and seizure, but the ECIR was registered in this case only because of the reason that the FIR had 120B of IPC, 120 capital B of IPC. So even when this was challenged before the court, Karnataka High Court said it is well and good. You can't, the ECR cannot be quashed just because it is an income tax offence. So this kind of a backdoor entry. Next is GST. In this Govind Enterprises case, I think it is UP, where one fellow was starting from formation of company. Everything is bogus. Everything, there is no entity. Everything false. Aadhaar card false, entry address false, input purchase false, output sales false, registration, everything except registration, everything is false. He was entering into huge GST fraud. Then the Assistant Commissioner Commercial Tax directed the police to register a case under IPC. So here the GST offence was registered under IPC 420 and 120 capital B. Here this offender also challenged this before the High Court, said that I am only committing a GST offence. They don't have locus standi to file an FIR under IPC. The court said nothing doing. The FIR is correct. Consequently, the ECR will follow for a GST Act also. Next, I am not retrospective application article 20 of class 1 is this is whether for offence which this is disputed before. Now the issue is pending before Supreme Court batch of writ petitions. whether this is why, because in 2009 many sections, many acts were added, many sections were added, like Provision of Corruption Act were added, like in Obalapuram mining, where the Prevention of Corruption Act was added only in the year 2009. Petitioners contended that at the time of commission of offence, this scheduled offence was not part of the PMLA. Then how can you convict me for an offence which is not part of the statute during the commission of offence? So many courts in Obalapuram mining, Karnataka High Court and Sanjay Kumar Gupta in Madras High Court and other citation, Tech Mahindra, other cases, the court held there are 10 judgments in favor of the petitioner, 10 judgments against the petitioners also. Now all the batch cases are pending before the Supreme Court. Whether Article 20 protection will be there available for under PMLA or not. Next is standalone money laundering. I will not touch because it is a very deeper subject. Value you can also will not touch. 45 offense cognizable or non-cognizable I have already discussed. So now I think I think we'll go to the last slide and open for the questions.
Thank you very much, sir.
So this slide, this slide which which came into our WhatsApp group 15 days back here. Yes, I got interest in this slide. In fact, you will find a man, a hardworking man with unclean hands. This may be a symbolic reflection of what is there in the society. Launderers and a man who works hard and gets money through untainted money, legitimate money, but though his hands are dirty. Yes. Now, any questions?
That particular picture speaks 1,000 words, sir. So it's actually a very nice picture.
Thank you, Prithvi.
Thank you, sir, for taking us through this session. I think there are a few questions which I was we can just by so first by Satish sir. So I'll just unmute.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
See, I have a small hypothetical question. See, there is a property which is coming up. There is a property which has come up for sale for 30 rupees. Okay. You and Vishwanathan want to purchase the property. Okay. So you and Vishwanathan have the 10 rupees which you have legitimately earned and which you have contributing to the property. I commit some sort of a crime and earn 10 rupees. And with that, I contribute and thereafter the property is purchased for 30 rupees. Now, in the enforcement department, there is also an FIR against me for the 10 rupees. Okay. Now, enforcement comes into the picture. Can they now attach the entire property? Can they attach the property?
Yeah. In fact, the very same question. Yeah. If you go through section 23, which speaks about interconnected transaction, say even if a portion of the various high courts say it is like a poison, a drop of poison in a milk is always a poison. Proceeds of crime, there is no ratio or proportion to the proceeds of crime. So it can be here, let us say 10 rupees